Welcome to Loving God and Loving Life. In 2 Corinthians 8, we find the theme being a call to generous giving. An interesting chapter as Paul is raising up an offering. And interestingly enough, this offering is for the poor people in Jerusalem. There was a famine going on, and Paul was raising up an offering for the poor people there. Now, what's amazing about this is, number one, Paul was himself supported by offerings, and he makes it quite clear that on a pretty regular basis, he really didn't have enough, but he's willing to not just receive offerings for himself, but to help the poor. That's always part of our lives. But in this offering, and he's challenging them to give generously. This is the chapter that we hear that if you sow little, you're going to reap little, that God does reward a generous heart, a generous giver. But the most amazing part of the chapter to me is he's kind of giving them a little example of another church that gave generously. And interestingly, this other church was in Macedonia. And Paul says to them in the second verse, he says that they're very poor. This other church was going through real tough times himself. In fact, Paul said that he didn't even want to receive an offering from them because they were so poor. So they're so destitute, Paul doesn't even want to take an offering, but they insisted on participating in the same offering that was being sent to Jerusalem. And Paul says these four things about them. They're very poor. He says they're being tested by troubles. So they're troubles, poverty, and then he says, but they have abundant joy and rich generosity. Now, how do those four things fit in the same people? Troubles, poverty, joy, and generosity. Gang, it is just so true. And I can testify in my own life. I can look back at my life and the moments that, with God anyways, that I relish the most, the moments in ministry were moments of great generosity. Where whether it was financially, many of them were financial, but financially, giving my heart, giving my time, I went that extra mile and I gave and I sacrificed. And those are the times I look back on and I'm like, that was so awesome because God just shows up. There's something about generosity, my friends. It's a gift from God. It's this enablement of our heart to just give freely and love freely. And I wish every day were quite that, but not every day ends up being quite that generous. But here's the interesting thing. I've had those days when I've had money in the bank. I've had those days when I didn't have money in the bank. Generosity, that generous heart, we'd like to think that it gets a lot easier to have that generous heart when we have more in the bank. It's not true. It's just not true. It's a gift from God. It's a grace from God. Wherever you're at, even this Macedonian church that was just totally destitute, maybe that's you. Maybe you're there. Don't believe the lie that I'm going to be generous when something happens. Don't believe that lie. You know when you want to be generous? Today. Give your heart, give your time, go that extra mile for people today. Yes, your time, your energy, your money. Help people in every way. And you're going to be so blessed. That generous heart, the first person to get blessed by your generosity is you. You're going to bless people, but your heart gets blessed in that process. God, thank you for your generosity. Fill us, God, with your spirit and that generosity, and send us one person today to share your love with. Friends, that's really what we're asking. We're asking God to set something up, set up a situation where we can show our generosity. That's really what we're praying every day as we ask for God to send us one person. Let's never forget it. It's when we sacrifice. It's when we serve God and love him that we end up with a life that we really love.